what's up, all my guys, gals, and non-binary pals? Welcome back into Healthy Scratch. It's great to have you guys here. Healthy Scratch, it was never meant to be about just one topic. Despite the fact that I'm a diehard hockey fan that grew up on the Boston Bruins, there's just so many other content creators out there and different kinds of podcasts where people just are so much better at talking about these sports on a day-to-day basis. I would rather just leave it up to the pros. Talk about just like crazy events and stuff that's out of the ordinary that happens every now and then. Other than that, I want to cover just more than sports. I want to talk about things like new music and movies that are coming out. I want to talk about gaming, sort of like how Rockstar is taking forever to release Grand Theft Auto 6. I want to talk about stuff going on TV. That way we can keep track about how many times Jimmy Kimmel's causing Trump to crash out on social media. Naturally, with that in mind, in today's environment, I'm definitely going to talk about politics, especially considering how much the Trump administration is just like directly attacking social services that I rely on a daily basis, such as SNAP and Medicaid. I also want to talk about current events outside of the States. I feel like because of all of the distractions behind the Epstein files being covered up, everything that's going on with ICE, just not a lot of people are talking about stuff that's happening on the world stage anymore, so I kind of want to raise my voice up about that and bring a little bit of awareness back to those topics. The main reason why we're here, though, the whole reason why this channel is called Healthy Scratch in the first place, is I want to talk about your mental health as well as just general health. Before we go any further, just considering that the topic of today's video is about my multiple sclerosis, I just want to make something extremely clear to everybody that I'm not a physician, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a neurologist. I have absolutely no sort of medical education or training. I'm simply just a 36-year-old who has this disease, and I'm trying to share my experience with all of you. I am the absolute last person that anybody should be going to for medical advice. Any medical advice that you should be taking should never come from a YouTube video or a TikTok. It should be coming from your personal physician and that person alone. With that being said, it's still really, really important for patients like me to be able to educate themselves on these sort of things. And that's really what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to share my experience as a patient so other people going through the same thing don't have to feel so alone. I'm also trying to use this channel so I can educate those of you who don't have this disease and are unfamiliar with it and a little bit more what it's like, because I feel like MS is one of the more misunderstood conditions out there. Everybody out there has heard of this disease, but they don't really know what it entails or what it's like to live with it, and so I can change that. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and start getting into it. Let's talk about how I was first diagnosed. When I was first starting to go through this process, it actually started being noticed while I was working. I used to work in an industrial warehouse, so it was kind of a loud environment, and I very quickly noticed that I was starting to lose the hearing in my left ear. Things were starting to become like super muffled and distorted. It almost felt like I had an ear infection or something stuck in my ear. And then the other thing that I started noticing after that was that my walking was very, very poor. I was having a lot of trouble with my equilibrium. It felt like I was on a boat that was moving back and forth in heavy water, or almost like I was drunk. I assumed with these two symptoms combined that it was like some sort of an ear infection or something like that. And so I decided to go to an urgent care at this point. The nurse practitioner there, he took a look inside my ear and he pretty much complimented me on how clean and in good shape my ear was. He didn't really say anything about my equilibrium, but he pointed out that the left side of my face wasn't moving at all. My left eye wasn't blinking as much as my right eye. When I was speaking, the left side of my face wasn't moving and I was only talking out of the right side of my mouth, and I also had a significant facial droop. This was giving him signs that I was showing signs of a condition called Bell's palsy, and so he basically gave me a script of some corticosteroids and sent me on my way. After that, I decided to go ahead and give my uncle a buzz because I kind of left there with more questions than answered. I mean, I went in there wondering about my balance and my equilibrium and what's going on with my ear. And the only things that were really covered and talked about being treated were what was going on with my eye not being able to blink and the palsy on my face. So I decided to go ahead and give my uncle a buzz. He is a retired physician. He had a long career as a military trauma doctor for the Army. And then after he retired from the military, he went on to continue his career as a primary care physician. So I explained some of the symptoms that I was experiencing from him. He agreed with the nurse practitioner saying that it kind of lined up with Bell's palsy, but the other symptoms that I was having with like what was going on with my ear and my equilibrium, it just didn't line up with Bell's palsy at all. So he said that something else was going on under the surface and recommended that I went back to the ER. When I first went back to the ER, the first nurse practitioner that I saw, when they first come in to like initially evaluate you and check out what's going on, she told me pretty much the exact same thing that the first nurse practitioner at the urgent care told me, that it looked like Bell's palsy, and pretty much tried to send me on my way. But at that point, I explained to her a little bit about what my uncle said. She went back to go ahead and talk about it with some of the other physicians that were on staff, and they agreed that I was eligible to go ahead and get a brain MRI to just kind of get an idea of what was going on there. The unfortunate part about this was that because of how busy the ER was that day, the process did take a couple of hours of waiting, but I didn't want to leave there without knowing what the hell was going on, so I decided to stick around. Now guys, real quick, before we go ahead and continue the video, I just want to remind everybody that Healthy Scratch is a brand new channel here. We're just getting started and we only have a very limited amount of subscribers, so our viewership reach is super duper limited. If I could get everybody to go ahead and just drop a quick like down here, hit the subscribe button up here if you want to see more of my content, and then go ahead and leave a comment down below. I would really appreciate it. It doesn't just let me know how good of a job I'm doing as a creator and what kind of content you want to see from me, but it also helps YouTube's algorithm out to help push my content out to more people and get more people to see my content. So if you guys could do that for me, I would really appreciate it. Now that I got all that cliche YouTuber crap out of the way, let's go ahead and get back to the video. So like I was saying, the ER was just super busy at this point, so I'm sitting there for hours with just all of these questions spinning around in my head with no answers at all. What the hell is going on? How serious is this? After about 5 hours, I was finally brought up upstairs for an MRI. About an hour later, a nurse came back down to explain to me that there was some activity being shown on my brain. That part was probably the most terrifying part of this experience, because she couldn't give me really any more specifics other than I had activity on my brain. And at this point, I had to wait pretty much another hour for a neurologist to come down and further explain to me what's going on. So while I'm sitting there waiting, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know if it's something minor that's going to heal very quickly, or if it's something major like a brain tumor. Eventually, the neurologist came down. She informed me that I had what appeared to be textbook multiple sclerosis. Now, as I mentioned before, MS is just one of those diseases that everybody's kind of heard of, but they don't really know how it's going to affect people or what it's like to live with you, and what it's like to live with it, rather, until you're really diagnosed with it. So at this point, when I first hear the words multiple sclerosis, I feel like I'm about to be told that I'm going to have a terminal condition that's going to eventually kill me. Fortunately for me, MS is not a terminal thing. As a 36-year-old, I used to be a pretty heavy smoker, so I'm going to cut myself a little bit short here. I realistically figure I got about another 30 to 35 years left to go. For the average MS patient, you're going to have a life expectancy of around 75. This disease only cuts off about an average of 10 years off of the average person's life expectancy. As I was saying about being a former heavy smoker, I was able to quit 2 years before my diagnosis. So real quick, just to add on top of this video, if you are a smoker and you are trying to quit, help is out there for you. There's all sorts of peer support systems that are available. And then there's even some medications out there that can help you kick the habit. So just keep that in mind. There's stuff out there that can help you quit. So anyway, back to the whole MS story. After being told that I had this condition, it was recommended by this neurologist that I would be admitted to the hospital. It was going to be about a 3-day process. They ended up putting me on a very, very high corticosteroid treatment to push me through my relapse and kind of speed up the healing process. It's kind of hard to explain dosage, but to put it into perspective, for people who know a little bit about medicine, I was on a 1,000 milligram drip for 3 days straight, so 3,000 milligrams total. So basically just like a big IV drag just kind of going straight into my veins there. During the process of this, aside from just getting like the steroid treatment and everything like that, I was given a multitude of other tests, a whole bunch of different blood work and stuff like that, just to rule out any other possibilities and just kind of confirm the diagnosis. They went even as far as giving me a spinal tap, which was absolutely excruciating, probably one of the more painful experiences I've ever had in my life. Definitely don't recommend it. But yeah, when I was finally released from the hospital, basically one of the first places that I went to learn more about this disease and get more information was YouTube. I unfortunately couldn't find very much information from patients like myself. I was able to find a bunch of really, really good quality content from people that are qualified physicians and doctors and neurologists and stuff like that, but not really anything from a patient's perspective. So that's kind of what I want to do here today, is give it to you from my perspective so you have a little bit of an idea of what this is like. MS is a lot more common than people think. It affects nearly 1 million people in the US and about 2.8 million people worldwide. The main reason why there's like practically a third of MS patients just living in the US is there is something about this disease. I can't get into the specifics because I don't fully understand it, but it's somewhat geographically localized, so people only get it in certain regions. Now, what MS actually is, I'm not going to get into like the full super scientific explanation. As I explained earlier, I'm not like a doctor or a physician, so I'm just going to give you kind of like the boilerplate basics here. So MS is an autoimmune disease where my immune system is it's almost confused in a sense, and it's attacking healthy tissue on my nervous system. This tissue is called myelin. Basically, if you think of this headphone cable right here, it's got this black protective coating around the wires inside to keep them from getting frayed and damaged. That's basically what myelin does for your nervous system. So sclerosis, that comes from the Greek word scleros. There's a common misconception that this word means scabs, but what it actually means is to harden or for hardening. This is basically representing the plaques that are left over once fresh damage from new lesions heal. So lesions are basically fresh damage that shows up like fresh inflammation. It's when you're having a fresh flare and basically an attack. When it gets older and it's scarred over, those are commonly referred to as plaques. Lesion location completely matters. So for example, if you get a lesion on your brainstem, that's going to affect things like vertigo. It's going to give you things like double vision, balance issues, numbness in your face. If you have a lesion show up on your spinal cord, that's when you get into things like leg weakness, numbness, tingling, spasticity. You can get into some bladder and bowel issues. If you have a lesion on your optic nerve, naturally that's going to give you vision issues like blurred vision, pain when you move your eyes, colors looking weirded out. And then you can get stuff like chronic migraines. With your brain, that's where a lot of this activity happens. So it's kind of hard to lay out specific symptoms that you get in that area, but just to give you a couple, that's where you run into things like heavy fatigue, cognitive fog, memory issues, being able to find words, clumsiness, and then other sorts of just like weird sensory changes. Now I can't give you coverage on like every single symptom out there, because like I said, I can only speak for myself as a patient, and this affects everybody a little bit differently. But some of the symptoms that I deal with is chronic spasticity. Basically, my muscles will get tight or stiff. They'll practically lock up. It happens a lot in my legs and in my lower back. Basically, yeah, it feels like your body is fighting against you when you try to move, and it can make walking really awkward or painful. It's a lot of cramping and stiffness that comes with it. It's typically treated with different types of muscle relaxers. Nerve pain will happen. That's probably one of the most common symptoms that MS patients are going to be dealing with, especially considering their myelin is getting damaged. It just kind of comes with the territory there. These are going to be things like burning electric shocks. You'll get stabbing sensations, pins and needle type feelings that show up randomly, and it can make it really hard to focus when this happens. It gets really distracting. Then vertigo will happen with a lot of patients. This isn't just dizziness. This is when the room feels like it is completely spinning in circles around you. Feels like you're on a boat in rough water and you're starting to get seasick. It just makes walking even more frustrating. This is where a lot of fall risk will happen. Just like seasickness, though, this is commonly treated with Dramamine. It works pretty well for a lot of patients. The other one that's super common for a lot of patients, as I mentioned before, is fatigue. This isn't just like being tired. This is a bone deep exhaustion that hits even after like the smallest tasks, and it can completely force you to stop what you're doing. It's absolutely like naturally it's literally exhausting. The other one that is super common, especially with people with a lot of brain lesions, is cognitive fog. This is when you get issues with trouble thinking clearly, losing your train of thought, forgetting simple words, or stumbling through certain words, as you've probably honestly even seen me do it a couple times through this video. Even though you look fine on the outside. That's one of the biggest issues that I have with this disease, is there's the kind of like mental side effect that happens where you just get this idea where it's almost like people think you're fine just because you look fine. Anyway, heat sensitivity, that's another one that is super common among us MS patients. What happens is it's referred to as Ufthoff's phenomenon. When it gets warm out there outside, or your body gets exposed to a lot of heat, it causes your nervous system to have inflammation on it, and this can trigger symptoms that are similar to like a full-blown relapse. For example, when I get this phenomenon, it causes my vision to blur. I start getting a really weird tingling numbness sensation throughout my body, and sometimes it makes me feel almost like I'm gonna throw up. It gives you a really weird sensory weirdness where you get just like this numbness, tingling, buzzing feeling. It feels like just parts of your body are just wrapped in tape, or you're just like wearing gloves when you're not. How all of this gets tracked. MRIs, like brain and spinal scans, are going to become pretty routine for you. I myself personally, I get an MRI about every 4 to 6 months, or whenever I start showing signs of new symptoms or potential new activity. They're, as I mentioned before, they're typically going to be on your brain and your spine, because that's the area where most lesions typically will show up. When you get these MRIs, you're typically going to be injected with what's called contrast dye. Contrast dye is basically it's literally a dye that gets injected into your blood that kind of almost illuminates it under an MRI, and it makes it so it's easier to show active inflammation that's occurring. It'll show you it'll show you the difference between a plaque and an active lesion, basically. Scanxiety is definitely a really, really big thing. When you call up when your doctor tells you you need an MRI, you call the MRI clinic to go ahead and schedule your appointment. Because these MRI tubes are so expensive, a lot of these clinics can only afford so many of them. And because these appointments take so long to process, usually there's a pretty long waiting list when you schedule an appointment. So you're sitting there for the entire time waiting for your appointment, wondering what the hell is going on. What activity is going on, if there's anything at all. Am I okay, or is something new going on? It can get really, really stressful. There's also the anxiety that comes from being within a tube. If you've never been inside an MRI before, basically what they do is they put you on a table, and then they insert you into this really, really small tube. Basically it's a whole bunch of magnets is what it is, and what it does is you have to stay perfectly still for anywhere from like a half hour to as long as 90 minutes is probably the longest MRI I had, and you have to be literally perfectly still while all of this knocking and banging is going on around. They give you ear protection every time I've ever had an MRI, though. The ear protection they've given me, it's never really done squat. Personally, my pro tip with MRIs, find earplugs that work and bring your own. It makes it way easier. So the other thing that can happen with MRIs, another really important reason why you get them, is for things that are called silent lesions. This is when new damage can appear even though you don't feel symptoms. It's basically appearing on a silent part of your brain that is not necessarily active as much as something like your cerebral cortex. These MRIs, basically, they help your neurologist decide whether or not your current medications are working or if you need to be making change. Now, there's 3 different kinds of treatments for MS. You're usually going to start off with the lowest risk scenario first, which is going to be the route of taking pills. These are commonly going to be things like dimethyl fumarate or Vumerity. You take them daily, usually once or twice a day. The weird thing about dimethyl fumarate was the one that I tried when I first was diagnosed. You get this really weird side effect called flushing. What flushing is when you first take the medication while it's dissolving into your system, your body kind of heats up, and your skin will literally turn red, and it feels like you have just like a blazing sunburn for like a half an hour. It's really, really interesting and really uncomfortable and weird. The other thing that can kind of happen with that is GI upset type deal. Next step after pills is going to be where you go into subcutaneous injections. These are going to be things like Capraxone, Plegridy, or Kesimpta is a new one that's came out pretty recently that's pretty successful among patients. The cool thing about Kesimpta is you only have to inject yourself once a month. The way these things are set up is it's almost like a GLP-1 shot that you see people using for weight loss. Basically, it's just a syringe that you just pop into your hip real quick, you wait a couple of seconds, it injects, and it gives you another click to let you know that the medication's all in there. Hold it for a couple of seconds just to make sure everything gets into your skin. Pop it out, and you're good to go for the next month. There's a little bit of anxiety that comes from injecting yourself for the first couple of times, but if it's a little bit too much for you, there are options out there. Like you can go to pharmacotherapy clinics where you can check in with a pharmacist on a monthly basis, and they can go ahead and just inject the drug for you. After injections, the next step for more progressive versions of the disease is typically going to be infusions like Ocrevus, Tysabri, or Rituxan. Another really good one that's been coming out recently has been Briumvi. These are going to be an IV infusion that's typically done in a clinic. They are more of a stronger option when you're dealing with more. The most common side effects as far as injections and infusions are concerned, fortunately, it's less stuff that's going to make you feel sick or anything. But you can get like small injection site reactions or rashes and things like that. When you go into an infusion clinic, your first infusion is going to be like super heavily supervised by like a team of nurses, just to make sure that you don't get any reactions, because in certain cases with infusions you can run into some pretty serious reactions. However, that's exactly why they supervise you, because they can be really, really quickly stopped if you start showing signs. So don't let that go ahead and scare you. The main lifestyle adjustments that you're going to run into is energy budgeting. You're going to have to treat your energy like it's a limited resource. You have to really pick your battles and choose what is worth spending your time and energy on. Keeping cool is super duper important. You want to use fans, AC, cooling towels, just avoiding heat in general. You're not going to want to go out and go sun tanning with your friends or hit beach days as much. And then another thing that is super helpful that I use personally is those fans that have those little water tanks on them that'll kind of mist you while you fan yourself off. Those can be super duper helpful in the summer, so I highly recommend anybody with MS. That's the one medical recommendation that I am going to give you that I definitely recommend you take from me, is get one of those fans. They are an absolute lifesaver. Sleep is another really, really important factor when it comes to MS. Good sleep becomes essential, because when you get a bad night's sleep, that's when everything gets worse, because it just adds to your fatigue and it amplifies your symptoms. Stress, it doesn't cause MS, but it can trigger flares, so reducing it matters. If you get too stressed out, it can bug out your immune system, or not your immune system, your nervous system, and it can cause what's called pseudo relapses. It's kind of almost similar to that whole Ufthoff's phenomenon that happens with heat sensitivity, where you'll get symptoms of a relapse even though no new activity or inflammation is happening on your body. Outside of that, the next thing that I'd like to talk about is mobility aids. These are pretty common with people with more progressive versions of the disease. Canes and walkers, they're not giving up. Don't be embarrassed to use these things. They're there to help you. They're there to make your life easier. It's the same thing if your disease gets progressive enough to the point where you get confined to a wheelchair. Those are designed to keep you safe and to make your life easier. You are not a failure. You are not giving up on anything just by using those. Please use those if your doctor recommends them. Mental health. This is probably the most important aspect of MS that I want to cover. Depression, it comes a lot from just grieving the life that you thought that you have before, plus the MS itself just in general, with the way it can affect certain parts of your brain. Certain lesions can literally just cause depression in general. It can be part of the disease as it is. Anxiety is a huge part of this. There's the uncertainty of not knowing when the next relapse is going to hit. There's the topic about this is a harder one for me to talk about because I've actually had issues with this in the past. MS, compared to any other disease out there, we have one of the highest suicide rates out there. It makes mental health that much important. If you have this disease, I can't recommend enough to hook yourself up with a mental health counselor as well as a psychiatrist. There's definitely help out there. You're going to be dealing things with like identity loss. You're going to feel like you lost the version that you had before, or you could do everything a lot easier. You could go out and do more things than you're able to do now. And that's where support comes in. There's therapy, there's support groups, and people who can actually listen and matter. The social impact of this disease is another really, really important aspect. There's the whole part that I was talking about before where you look fine, but invisible symptoms make it appear to people that you're okay when you're really not. There's some friends that are going to get it. There's going to be a lot that don't. Some of them are going to step up. A lot of them, if I'm being honest, are going to disappear. Work, you're going to need some accommodations or reduced hours in order to go ahead and pull it off. Some of you might even need to stop working completely and apply for things like Social Security. Dating is insanely difficult with this disease. Telling somebody that you have MS can be very, very scary. You're with your social life, canceling plans can just often feel way more isolated, but there's just a lot of times where you're just not able to go ahead and follow through on plans that you've made with your friends because you're just having a fatigue crash and you just don't have the energy for it. One of the biggest things that I can recommend to you guys is if you have this disease, find other patients that have MS with it. Talking to people who actually understand really helps a lot. It's one of the things that I myself am personally slacking on, and I need to do a better job of doing. MS is manageable. It's not curable, but it is insanely treatable. Many people with this disease live full and complete lives. Everybody's path is different. No two cases are the same. You are completely allowed to feel overwhelmed. You don't have to feel strong 24/7. You're not alone. There's millions of people worldwide with this disease. And with that in mind, there's things out there that can really, really help and support you. The biggest thing out there is the National MS Society. They are focused entirely on multiple sclerosis. Their research funds new treatments and better diagnostic tools. They can help people access mobility aids and home modifications to help them out with their mobility. They offer patient support groups, education, and just help navigating life with MS in general. So with that in mind, I really want to thank every single one of you guys for sticking around. This has been such a great video. I know we went a little bit long here, but I want to thank everybody for watching Healthy Scratch. Stay healthy, and I'll catch you on the next video.